The human mind is a marvel. It's a glittering engine of innovation that split the atom, composed symphonies, and built cities in the clouds. But it's also, occasionally, a dumpster fire of impulse, a short-circuiting mess of what if and hold my beer. We've compiled the case files, the receipts, and the police reports. This isn't just a list. It's a monument to the spectacular, baffling, and darkly hilarious failures of Homo sapiens. 1. The Concrete Vendetta. When a British plumber wanted to enact revenge on his ex-girlfriend, he didn't just key her car. He went for her plumbing. As a professional, he knew exactly what he was doing. He poured several bags of concrete mix down her toilet. What he apparently forgot was the fundamental interconnectedness of modern sanitation. The concrete didn't just harden in her S-bend. It set, rock solid, through her pipes and into the entire public sewer line on her street. His little joke, a bitter act of domestic revenge, escalated into a municipal disaster, shutting down the neighborhood and racking up a damage bill reported to be over $100,000. It's a perfect metaphor, a relationship ending in a permanent, expensive blockage. 2. The Lard-Coated Protest. In the grand theater of petty protest, this Rhode Island man deserves a special award for sheer, greasy commitment. Furious over a 25-cent parking ticket, a quarter, he decided to make a point. He would pay the fine entirely in pennies, but this was not enough. To truly convey his outrage, he meticulously coated every single coin in lard. This wasn't just an inconvenience. It was a bio-warfare attack on the municipal clerk's office. His genius move, however, backfired. The sticky, foul-smelling mess he created wasn't just making a point. It was deemed malicious destruction of currency. He successfully turned a 2-bit fine into a federal offense investigation. 3. The Banana Road Crew. Florida. Where else? A man, deeply frustrated by a persistent pothole in his neighborhood, decided to bypass the slow grind of municipal bureaucracy. He didn't write a letter. He didn't call his city councilor. He planted a banana tree in it. On one hand, it's brilliant performance art. It's impossible to ignore a tropical plant sprouting from the middle of the road. On the other hand, it's a crime. While his botanical protest certainly drew attention to the problem, he was promptly arrested for criminal mischief and obstruction of a roadway. The road was eventually fixed, but the man was left with a criminal record and, presumably, no bananas. 4. The Trebuchet Solution. When you have noisy neighbors, most people consider earplugs, a polite conversation, or maybe calling the police. A man in Washington state, however, decided to consult the 13th century military playbook. His rational response to the disturbance was to construct a full-scale, functional medieval trebuchet in his yard. He then began launching projectiles at their house. One must admire the engineering and the sheer historical audacity. But police, unsurprisingly, tend to frown on siege warfare in a suburban setting. While it was a mechanically impressive solution, it was not, in the eyes of the law, an approved method of conflict resolution. 5. The Penny Payoff. When a mechanic in Georgia quit his job, he was owed a final paycheck of $915. His former boss, in a fit of Shakespearean-level spite, decided to pay him. In pennies. But not just any pennies. He delivered 91,500 coins, all coated in a thick, noxious layer of motor oil and grease, and dumped them on the man's driveway. It was a final fuck you written in copper and sludge. The mechanic, however, got the last laugh. He spent hours cleaning the coins, but the story went viral. The boss's petty move brought the wrath of the internet and the Department of Labor down on his shop, resulting in investigations, fines, and a PR disaster far more costly than $915. 6. The Microwave Vidiot. In the grand, global contest for internet fame, the bar for entry is low, but the price of failure is high. A British YouTuber, desperate for clicks, decided on a prank that sits at the precise intersection of viral and Darwin Award. He decided to cement his own head inside a microwave oven. He used polyfilla, a fast-setting plaster-like filler, and even had a breathing tube. The problem? The filler expanded, trapping the tube and slowly crushing his skull. It took a team of visibly annoyed West Midlands firefighters over an hour to delicately chisel the appliance off his head. all while he was having trouble breathing. He got his viral video, but the fire service issued a public statement basically saying, "Please don't do this." 7. The lawnmower, the roof, and the greenhouse. Some ideas are born from necessity. Others are born from a bottle of vodka at 3 a.m. A homeowner in Sweden, while intoxicated, looked at his mossy roof and then at his ride-on lawnmower. A connection was formed. A terrible, brilliant connection. He somehow, a feat of drunken engineering that defies physics, managed to get the heavy machine onto the roof. His goal? To trim the moss. His reality? He predictably lost control almost immediately. He and the mower rode straight off the edge, crashing spectacularly into his greenhouse below. The mower was totaled. The greenhouse was annihilated. The man miraculously survived to nurse a hangover and a truly magnificent insurance claim. 8. The Dynamite Stump Remover. Here's a simple rule of thumb. If your DIY solution involves dynamite, it's probably not a DIY solution. An Oregon man, faced with a small, stubborn tree stump in his yard, decided to skip the shovel and the stump grinder and go straight to Looney Tunes logic. He acquired half a case of dynamite. The ensuing explosion did, technically, solve the stump problem. It vaporized it. It also vaporized a significant portion of his yard and sent a massive cloud of dirt, shrapnel, and rocks flying hundreds of feet. This plume of debris then landed directly on his neighbor's brand-new car, crushing it. Mission failed successfully. 9. The Bug Bomb Car. Cockroaches. They are a resilient, ancient foe. To defeat them, a resident in a Brazilian apartment building decided he needed an overwhelming show of force. He got a can of bug spray, lit it on fire like a flamethrower, and then, for reasons that will forever remain a mystery to science, threw the entire flaming can under his car in the garage. The resulting explosion was a thing of cinematic beauty. It didn't just destroy his car, it damaged 7 others and blew out windows across the entire building. The cockroaches, being cockroaches, probably survived, clinging to a piece of smoldering wreckage and wondering what all the noise was about. 10. The Beehive Incinerator. How do you handle a beehive in your shed? The safe, sane answer is to call a professional beekeeper. A man in Texas, however, chose a different path. He chose the path of fire. Specifically, he chose the path of a Molotov cocktail. He hurled the improvised incendiary device at the shed, hoping to, what? Scare the bees away? The resulting firestorm was immediate and total. It not only eliminated the bees, but also the shed, his nearby truck, and a significant portion of his house. It's the ultimate scorched earth policy. The problem was solved, along with every other non-problem in a 50-foot radius. 11. The Spider-Man, Far From Home. Spiders in the laundry room are a common domestic nuisance. A Seattle man, upon discovering one such arachnid, decided he would not coexist. He would escalate. But instead of a shoe or a cup, he reached for a can of gasoline and a lighter. He attempted to use this makeshift flamethrower to dispatch the tiny spider. What he achieved was a large-scale pest control effort that immediately engulfed his entire laundry room, and then his house, in flames. He escaped unharmed. The spider's fate, however, remains unknown. It's entirely possible it survived and is now the star of its own terrifying 8-legged walking away from an explosion movie. 12. The Boat, the Blowtorch, and the Puddle. DIY repairs on a boat are tricky. They become infinitely trickier when you ignore the basic laws of chemistry. A man in England tried to repair a small leak in his metal boat. His chosen tool was a lit blowtorch. His chosen location was standing in a puddle of gasoline that had leaked from the boat's engine. The resulting fireball was as predictable as it was spectacular. It sent him to the hospital with significant burns and sent his boat, now fully ablaze, to the bottom of the harbor. He managed to combine fire and water in the worst way imaginable. 13. The Sound of Silence. Soundproofing your car is a nice idea. Maybe you're an audiophile. Maybe you just want some peace. A man in Britain decided to do this, but he skipped the Dynamite and went straight for industrial-grade expanding foam. He wasn't content to line the doors. He decided to fill his car's entire chassis with the stuff. The foam, which is designed to expand, did exactly that. It swelled with such unstoppable force that it warped the metal frame, shattered the windows from the inside out, and buckled all 4 doors shut. He had permanently entombed his own vehicle, turning his car into a silent, immovable, foam-filled monument to a very bad idea. 14. The steering wheel of fortune. When German police pulled over a driver for erratic behavior, they were prepared for drunk, high, or asleep. They were not prepared for what they found. The car had no steering wheel. In its place, the driver had attached a metal pot lid to the steering column with a single, lonely clamp. This wasn't a joke. The man genuinely argued to the officers that it was a perfectly safe and functional modification. It's a stunning display of, if it's stupid and it works, it ain't stupid. Except this was spectacularly stupid and clearly didn't work, as evidenced by the getting pulled over part. 15. The Aqua-Mobile. Snowmobiles are, as the name explicitly suggests, for snow. A man in Minnesota, fueled by party anticipation and a profound misunderstanding of physics, decided to take a shortcut. He was going to ride his snowmobile across a patch of open lake water. He gunned it, hitting the water with all the confidence of a Dukes of Hazzard stuntman. He got about halfway across before the machine's momentum met reality. The snowmobile sank like a 500-pound brick, leaving him stranded in the freezing water, much further from the party than when he started. 16. The Spanish Steps Incident. A tourist in Italy, renting a humble Fiat Panda, was apparently annoyed that his car wasn't a Ferrari. So, he decided to make a name for himself. How? By driving it. Down Rome's historic 18th-century Spanish Steps. The UNESCO World Heritage Site, famously not designed for vehicular traffic, suffered permanent damage. The man's shortcut to sightseeing fame ended exactly as you'd expect, with his arrest, a massive fine, and a lifetime ban from the site. He wanted a memorable trip to Rome. He got one, along with a starring role in Italy's national news as that idiot in the Panda. 17. The GPS. A bridge too far. Blindly following your GPS is a modern-day leap of faith. For a tourist in Iceland, it was a leap of faith straight into the freezing North Atlantic. She was driving, and her GPS insistently told her to keep going. She failed to notice the minor contextual clue that the road was, in fact, a boat launch. She drove her SUV straight down the ramp and into the ocean. When rescuers arrived, she calmly explained that the GPS told her to. It's a terrifying look at our reliance on technology, where a digital voice can overrule the very obvious visual evidence of, an entire ocean. 18. The Drawbridge Defiance. There are 2 options when you approach a rising drawbridge. You stop, or you don't. A Florida man, faced with this exact scenario, decided to channel his inner stunt driver. He saw the ever-widening gap not as a warning, but as a challenge. He floored his car. He did not, however, have the benefit of a Hollywood stunt ramp or cinematic physics. He didn't make it. The plunge into the river below was a dramatic, wet, and deeply embarrassing end to his shortcut. The bridge won. Gravity won. Florida, as always, won. 19. The Bumper Plate Special. When a thief in Washington decided to steal a traffic light pole, he had a plan. It was a bad plan, but it was a plan. He tied the massive metal pole to his small pickup truck and hit the gas. He seemed to believe the pole, which was professionally installed in several feet of concrete, would just pop out. The pole, unsurprisingly, did not move. His truck's bumper, however, did. It was ripped clean off the vehicle, left dangling at the scene as a perfect piece of evidence, complete with his license plate still attached. 20. The River of Denial. A shortcut is only a shortcut if it works. A driver in Wisconsin, fed up with a traffic jam, decided to take an impromptu off-road excursion across a frozen river. He looked at the ice, looked at his 2-ton vehicle, and thought, yes, this seems fine. The ice, which was not fine, broke almost immediately. He managed to escape, but his car remained at the bottom of the river. It became a very cold, very expensive, very public monument to impatience. 21. The Great Emu War. In 1932, the Australian military officially declared war on its wildlife. The enemy? 20,000 emus that were damaging crops. The military deployed soldiers armed with Lewis machine guns. The problem? The emus, it turned out, were tactical geniuses. They employed guerrilla tactics, scattering into small groups, dodging bullets, and absorbing heavy machine gun fire with minimal casualties. After weeks of being comprehensively outsmarted, humiliated, and wasting thousands of rounds of ammunition, the Australian Army, a professional fighting force, officially withdrew in defeat. 22. The Shark in the Stroller. This was not the heist of the century. 3 people in Texas decided to steal a live horn shark from the San Antonio Aquarium. Their brilliant plan involved wrapping the 16-inch shark in a wet blanket, placing it in a bucket, and smuggling it out in a baby stroller. Their plan fell apart almost immediately. Why? Because a shark, wrapped in a wet blanket in a bucket, drips. A lot. They left a massive, continuous trail of dripping salt water from the shark tank through the aquarium all the way to the parking lot. Police simply followed the puddle. 23. The Flipping Fish Skirt. A woman tried to smuggle 51 live tropical fish into Australia, hidden in a specially designed skirt. Australia has some of the strictest biosecurity laws on the planet, so this was already a bad idea. But her plan was foiled not by X-rays, not by sniffer dogs, but by simple acoustics. As she stood at the customs counter, officials heard flipping noises coming from her waist. Her aquatic contraband was making too much of a scene. She was caught because her fish were just too damn loud. 24. The Turtle Burger Conspiracy. Another day, another airport security checkpoint. Another baffling attempt at smuggling. A woman in China was so determined to avoid paying an airline fee for her pet that she tried to smuggle her turtle through security. Her disguise? She disguised it as a KFC hamburger. She tucked the reptile, presumably still in its shell, between the 2 halves of a bun and placed it in a KFC-branded bag. The X-ray operators were, shall we say, not fooled. They were immediately suspicious of the oddly shaped, vaguely turtle-like burger. 25. The Kangaroo Boxing Match. Here is a simple travel tip. If you see a large wild kangaroo in Australia, the correct response is to keep your distance. A tourist decided the correct response was to challenge it to a boxing match. He approached the marsupial with his fists up, bouncing on his toes like a 1920s pugilist. The kangaroo, unimpressed, accepted the challenge. It delivered a series of powerful kicks that sent the man tumbling. He was left bruised, humiliated, and, most importantly, the star of a viral video that perfectly captures the divide between human confidence and animal reality. 26. The Boomerang Burglar. In a moment of pure, unfiltered criminal genius, a man in Michigan attempted to rob a store with a boomerang. He charged in and hurled the aerodynamic weapon at the shopkeeper. He missed. The boomerang then did exactly what boomerangs are designed to do. It flew out the open door, completed its arc, circled back, and hit the robber squarely in the back of the head. It knocked him unconscious. The police arrived to find the suspect literally self-neutralized on the sidewalk. It is, perhaps, the only perfect self-solving crime in history. 27. The Spotify Witness. Planning a burglary requires stealth and anonymity. This genius in Minnesota broke into a house and, while ransacking the place, decided he needed a soundtrack. He logged into his own Spotify account on the victim's smart speaker. When the homeowners returned, they found their house in disarray. But they also had a key piece of evidence. The homeowner simply asked the speaker, who was the last user? The device promptly announced the burglar's full name. The police had their man, thanks to a fatal need for a good playlist. 28. The Tattooed Confession. A gang member in Los Angeles committed a murder. This, in itself, is a tragedy, not a folly. The folly came after. To commemorate his crime, he got a highly detailed, massive tattoo across his entire chest. It wasn't subtle. It depicted the entire crime scene, the location, the streetlights, the getaway car, the victim. He was later picked up on an unrelated charge, and a sharp-eyed detective noticed the tattoo. It was a perfect inked roadmap to an unsolved murder. Some people keep a diary. He chose a permanent, wearable confession. 29. The Self-Solving Slip and Fall. Executing the perfect insurance scam requires brains and timing. This guy in New Jersey had neither. He decided to fake a slip and fall at a business. He theatrically threw himself to the ground and began to writhe in agony. But he forgot the most crucial element, the slip part. Realizing his error, security cameras filmed him calmly standing up, walking over to a drink station, grabbing a cup, pouring liquid on the ground, and then theatrically throwing himself back into his own pre-prepared puddle. His lawsuit was not successful. 30. The courtesy call robber. Stealth. Surprise. These are the elements of a successful robbery. A man in Connecticut decided to innovate. His master plan involved calling the store beforehand to ask how much money was in the register. The store employee, understandably suspicious of this pre-robbery financial query, immediately called the police. The officers were already there, waiting for him, when the genius arrived, mask and all, to rob the place. He had effectively booked his own arrest. 31. The grease vent interlude. Getting stuck is a common fear for burglars. One man in California experienced it firsthand. He tried to break into a closed Chinese restaurant by squeezing through the grease vent. It was as disgusting as it sounds. He became hopelessly wedged in the narrow, filth-caked shaft. He was trapped for 2 full days, covered in rancid grease, until a passerby heard his faint, pathetic cries for help. He was arrested, extracted by the fire department, and probably needed the world's longest shower. 32. The voice of reason. Wearing a mask during a bank robbery is standard procedure. However, the disguise is significantly less effective if the teller recognizes you anyway. A German robber was thwarted because he had such a distinctive voice that the teller immediately identified him as a regular customer. He was arrested later that same day, at the same bank, when he came back, to try and deposit the money he had just stolen into his own account. The audacity is almost impressive. 33. The Dojos Bad Day. A man in Brazil decided to rob a martial arts dojo. Let's pause there. He walked in, pulled a toy gun, and demanded valuables from a room filled with professional fighters. The head instructor, a jiu-jitsu master, calmly told the robber he was in the wrong place. The robber didn't listen. He did not leave with any valuables. He left on a stretcher, with several broken bones, after being swiftly and efficiently neutralized by the dojo's occupants. 34. The Return-to-Sender Smuggler. A drug dealer in Australia took full service to a new level. He decided to mail a package of narcotics directly to one of his customers. The problem wasn't the plan, it was the execution. He forgot to add enough postage. The post office, following procedure, was unable to deliver the package. So, they did the only other thing they could. They sent it, return to sender. The package of illegal drugs was dutifully returned to the return address, which was, of course, the drug dealer's own house, where police were presumably very happy to receive it. 35. The Peanut Butter Escape. A prisoner in a West Virginia jail concocted a brilliant escape plan. He believed he could disguise himself from the prison's thermal cameras. His method? He covered his entire body in peanut butter. Believing he was now invisible, he climbed onto the roof. He was, of course, immediately spotted, not by thermal cameras, but by guards using their own eyes, who were presumably baffled by the sight of a man coated in Jif. His plan was, quite literally, nuts. 36. The Flat Earth Finale. Mad Mike Hughes was a self-taught rocketeer whose life mission was to prove the Earth is flat. To do this, he built a steam-powered rocket in his backyard. In 2020, he launched himself 5,000 feet into the California sky. This was his grand experiment. Unfortunately, his parachute deployed too early on ascent, tearing itself apart. He plummeted back to the desert floor. He never got his proof that the Earth is flat, but he did provide a very final, very fatal demonstration that gravity is, in fact, very, very real. 37. The Eiffel Tower Test. In 1912, a tailor named Franz Reichelt invented a wearable parachute suit. He was convinced it was the future of aviation safety. To prove it worked, he secured permission to test it by jumping off the first deck of the Eiffel Tower. In front of a crowd and newsreel cameras, he climbed onto the ledge, paused, and leapt. The suit did not deploy. It wrapped around him like a shroud, and he fell to his death. The entire event was filmed, capturing one of history's most confident and most fatal product demos. 38. The Water-Logged Wii. Radio contests are famous for their wacky stunts. This one turned tragic. A woman in California entered a Hold Your Wii for a Wii contest. The goal? Drink an enormous amount of water without going to the bathroom. The prize? A Nintendo Wii worth about $250 at the time. She won the console. She then went home and died a few hours later from acute water intoxication. She had literally, and for a very small prize, drowned her own body from the inside out. 39. The Crossbow Family Picnic. Some family traditions are better left in the Middle Ages. Two brothers in Belgium decided to play a game of William Tell with a crossbow. One brother placed a beer can on his head. The other, standing just 15 feet away, took aim. He missed the can. He shot his brother directly in the forehead. In a plot twist that defies all medical logic, the brother survived. The bolt had lodged in his skull but missed his brain. Their family game nights were, presumably, canceled forever. 40. The meth consumer complaint. A man in South Carolina called 911. The nature of his emergency? His brand new meth was not of a high enough quality. He was so dissatisfied with his purchase that he wanted the police to investigate the dealer who had sold him the subpar product. The police, of course, did investigate. They came to his house, tested his meth, confirmed it was, in fact, meth, and then arrested him for possession. Customer service, this was not. 41. The $54 million pants. A man in Washington, D.C. sued his local dry cleaner for $54 million. The reason? They had lost his pants. This wasn't a typo. He claimed the satisfaction guaranteed sign was a legally binding contract, and the only satisfaction he would accept was a sum large enough to buy a small island. The case clogged the court system for 2 years. The man, who was a judge himself, lost his job over the ordeal. In the end, it was discovered the pants were at the dry cleaner the whole time. He lost the case, his career, and his reputation, all over a single pair of trousers. 42. The Self-Suing Genius. A man, after being arrested for burglary, filed a $5 million lawsuit. The defendant? Himself. He sued himself, claiming that he had violated his own civil rights by getting himself drunk, which led to his arrest. This was not a philosophical exercise. His brilliant legal strategy was that his homeowner's insurance policy would be forced to pay out the settlement. To him, the judge, in a rare moment of legal clarity, was not impressed and dismissed the case, calling it frivolous. 43. The Eiffel Tower Scam. Believing a con man is one thing. Believing a con man who is trying to sell you the Eiffel Tower is a level of gullible that deserves its own chapter in history. In 1925, con man Victor Lustig convinced a scrap metal dealer named André Poisson that the Paris landmark was being dismantled and sold for scrap. Poisson fell for it, paying a huge sum for the rights to the tower. Lustig took the money, vanished, and then, months later, tried the same scam again. 44. The Bitcoin Ghost. Forgetting where you parked your car is annoying. Forgetting you parked your multi-million-dollar Bitcoin fortune on a hard drive you then threw in the trash. That's a unique, modern-day form of torment. A man in Wales tossed a hard drive in 2013 that contained a Bitcoin wallet. That wallet is now worth hundreds of millions of dollars. He has spent years, and a fortune, trying to get permission to excavate the landfill where his digital treasure is buried. He is haunted by the ghost of a fortune he technically owns, but will almost certainly never touch. 45. The Stab-Proof Success. During a live TV interview about the dangers of knife crime, a police chief decided to demonstrate a stab-proof vest. To show his absolute confidence in the product, he had a reporter stab him. The reporter, perhaps a little too enthusiastically, did just that. The knife went straight through a section of the vest that wasn't protected, sending the chief to the hospital. The demonstration was, in a way, a bloody success. It proved that getting stabbed is, in fact, very dangerous. 46. The Fugitive Who Stayed Dead. Faking your own death for the insurance money is a classic scam. The most important part of this scam, however, is staying fake dead. A British man who drowned in a canoe accident was living it up for 5 years. He was finally busted after an amateur sleuth on a missing persons website, a hobbyist, recognized his photo in a picture of him living his new life. busted by a random person on the internet. 47. The Self-Mailing Man. The dream of free travel is universal. In 1965, an Australian man named Reg Spears decided to achieve it by mailing himself from London to Perth in a custom-built wooden crate. The flight was not direct. The crate was diverted, left in a hot airport hangar upside down for hours, and he nearly died of dehydration. He did, miraculously, arrive in Australia, but he arrived in a state of near death, proving that free shipping is rarely, if ever, free. 48. The ATM That Wouldn't Fit. Stealing an entire ATM sounds like a great idea. It's a box full of money. A team of geniuses in Texas successfully ripped a machine from the wall of a convenience store. They got it outside, adrenaline pumping. And then the logistical nightmare began. They realized the machine weighed nearly 1,000 pounds. And, more importantly, it would not fit in their getaway vehicle, a small minivan. They were filmed struggling, pushing, and pivoting before finally giving up. They abandoned the ATM in the parking lot and fled empty-handed. 49. The ATM Argument. A man in Florida, convinced that a local ATM was voice-activated, began politely asking it for money. When the machine inevitably failed to respond to his verbal requests, he didn't check for a card slot. He got angry. He started yelling at the ATM, berating it for its poor service. This escalated into a full-blown, one-sided argument, which culminated in him physically attacking the machine. He was arrested for vandalism, having officially lost a fight with an inanimate object. 50. The million-dollar question. A counterfeiter in America marched into a big-box store and tried to pay for his items with a $1 million bill. He insisted it was real, claiming the paper felt money-ish. The U.S. Treasury has never printed a $1 million bill. The largest ever in public circulation was $10,000. Loss prevention, rather than accepting the novelty note, gave him a much more authentic experience with a real pair of handcuffs and a trespass ban. Conclusion. So, what have we learned? We've learned that if you have a noisy neighbor, a trebuchet is a historically accurate but legally frowned upon solution. We've learned that a boomerang is a more effective crime-fighting tool than it is a robbery weapon. We've learned that emus are, pound for pound, more resilient than a machine gun-toting army. And we've learned that if you're going to smuggle a turtle, at least have the decency to not disguise it as fast food. These aren't just isolated incidents of bad luck. They are perfectly formed monuments to human folly. They are the glorious, unfiltered moments when our ambition, our greed, or our sheer, unadulterated stupidity completely hijacks the part of the brain responsible for survival. From the man suing himself for $5 million to the man who cemented his own head in a microwave, these stories form a kind of shadow history. They are the B-side to human achievement. While one person was discovering penicillin, another, somewhere else, was probably trying to see if a pot lid really couldn't be used as a steering wheel. The world is a complex, often terrifying place. But it's reassuring to know that, no matter how badly you think you've messed up today, you probably didn't call 911 to complain about the quality of your meth. You likely didn't lose a war to a large, flightless bird. And you almost certainly did not try to pay for your groceries with a $1 million bill. In the grand, chaotic theater of human existence, these people are not the heroes. They are not the villains. They are the stagehands who accidentally set the curtain on fire, the orchestra that started playing in the wrong key, and the lead actor who showed up at the wrong theater. And for that we must perhaps be profoundly grateful. They provide the ultimate public service. They make the rest of us feel, by comparison, like absolute geniuses.